Hello, and welcome to my third video covering Marvel Studios' What If. Go check out the intro of my first What If video if you want to know how I will be treating problems in the show, because it's not the main timeline. And with that, let's jump right into it. Monday. After the intro and a fade to black, the episode is immediately wrong. The reason it's wrong is rather complicated, and I will get into it later. But for now, just know that this is wrong. It'll be interesting. The error there isn't a mundane one. After that, Fury and Black Widow talk in a car about Tony Stark. Then Fury goes to talk to him, like we see in Iron Man 2. This scene is basically just a cut-down version of the scene from Iron Man 2. But the donut shop just says donuts rather than Randy's Donuts, which is a weird change to make. The real difference comes when Natasha injects what's supposed to be lithium dioxide, and Tony dies. We cut away to the Watcher telling us about how in the same week, the events of Iron Man 2, The Incredible Hulk, and Thor happened. Which is actually true, although they mess up some of the specifics, which we'll get to later. We're then on to Tuesday, where Coulson finds Thor's hammer, so he'll need to stay there and set up a base. Him finding the hammer at this point is strange though. The week in which Iron Man 2, The Incredible Hulk, and Thor take place is referred to as Fury's Big Week, and in the main timeline its events are the following. On day 1, we have Tony's birthday, where he has his party and Rhodey flies off with the Iron Man suit. On day 2, Tony meets Fury, which I will call the donut scene. On day 3, Coulson is reassigned to New Mexico, and as he is traveling there, the final battle of Iron Man 2 happens, and Thor lands on Earth. Coulson arrives on day 4, and on that same day, the S.H.I.E.L.D. base is set up around the hammer, and Thor breaks into that base and then is captured. The final day that we care about is day 5, where the battle at Culver University in The Incredible Hulk happens. In What If, Coulson finding the hammer is happening one day after the donut scene, even though it was 2 days later in the main timeline. Let's say that in the What If episode, Coulson was reassigned to New Mexico a day earlier because of Tony's death. Now to talk about Thor's hammer being there. In the main timeline, the hammer wouldn't be there until nighttime of the day after the donut scene. But in the What If episode, something changed before this point that we'll learn about later. So maybe in this episode, the butterfly effect caused the donut scene to happen a day later for whatever reason. I doubt they actually thought about this at all. And the weird things about this is that it played out so similarly to how it did in Iron Man 2, and Tony has a hangover, which in the main timeline was because his party was last night, but under the assumption we're making to make it work out, I guess he just got hungover the next day as well. There's another timeline issue that isn't a big deal, but I thought it was interesting, so I'm going to talk about it. So the events that couldn't have taken place on different days are Tony's birthday and Thor's arrival, as the change wasn't long enough ago to affect when Tony was born, and could not have possibly affected Asgard. Neither of those have a day of the week that's stated in their respective movies. However, we do know the gaps between days, so we know that Tony's birthday happens 2 days before Thor is banished to Earth, which happens 2 days before the battle at Culver University in The Incredible Hulk. And The Incredible Hulk does give us a day of the week. Betty says it's Friday on the night she reunites with Bruce.
Come on, Stan, it's Friday night.
And the battle at Culver is the next day, according to the official timeline. Although there's nothing in the movie that explicitly confirms it's the next day. But even if we're going off of the movie alone, it's still the most reasonable assumption, as Samson calls Ross to tell him about Bruce, which causes the battle at Culver. So he would have no reason to wait on that phone call instead of just doing it the next day. So with the battle at Culver happening on a Saturday, that places Thor's arrival on a Thursday, and Tony's birthday on a Tuesday. So even with all the stretches we made earlier, the days of the week just can't work out. The donut scene is supposedly Monday, when it should be Thursday, because it's on the same day Thor arrives. Because of all of this, the rest of the days of the week given throughout the episode are wrong as well. When Coulson's done calling Fury, we see that Natasha is under investigation for the murder of Tony Stark. She says,
I may not have been a fan of Tony Stark, but I didn't kill him.
Which is at a very weird time. Wouldn't she be saying that before or as she's getting handcuffed, not after she's already cuffed and is being walked to the truck that's going to bring her to New York? They say,
Save your spin for Pierce. Want you in New York first thing for questioning.
Yet they allow Fury to talk to her, which is wasting time, not exactly getting her there first thing. And let's take a step back and look at what the situation is like from S.H.I.E.L.D's point of view. Tony Stark has started getting reckless, and has become a problem for Fury, as he says in the episode.
You become a problem I have to deal with.
Now S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't hear that line, but they are definitely aware of this sentiment, so when Fury decides to go deal with this problem, he brings Natasha along for no apparent reason, and has her be the one to inject the antidote, killing Tony Stark. So don't you think it looks at least a bit suspicious? Like maybe Fury might have wanted to deal with his problem in a less than legal way, and frame the former Russian spy for it, because she's his best option for that? Keep in mind that nobody in S.H.I.E.L.D. is going to trust Natasha as much as Fury, because he is the one that recruited her, giving him an easier time framing her for the murder. All of this would be information Natasha has as well, and she did hear the line about Tony being a problem Fury has to deal with, yet she isn't suspicious of him either. And even if he didn't frame her, he is still the one who recruited someone who they think murdered Tony Stark on the job, so you'd think his role at S.H.I.E.L.D. would at least be on pause until this gets sorted out. But no. Despite all of this, he is not under investigation and still has a job, getting to go around and investigate other powerful people like the one he may or may not have just killed. Another possible explanation is that he conspired with Natasha to kill Tony, so you definitely shouldn't be letting him talk to her one-on-one. And he slips her the syringe. I guess nobody around is watching them intently enough to notice that happened, or that Nat is holding it for a while. Fantastic job, S.H.I.E.L.D. Or should I say, Hydra. This is before Captain America the Winter Soldier. So that means S.H.I.E.L.D. is secretly being run by Hydra. So on top of all these reasons Fury should logically be under investigation, or even arrested, Hydra is being handed the golden opportunity to remove one of the highest members of S.H.I.E.L.D. who isn't part of Hydra. And instead, they just let him keep his job and continue to do whatever he wants. This isn't the end of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s incompetency in the episode though, so let's keep moving. Fury is trusting Natasha to figure out who compromised the antidote, and he trusts that she didn't do it, which is understandable considering how well he knows her and that she had very little room to compromise the plan if she wanted to. Natasha is put in the truck and driven away. Earlier in the conversation with Fury, she said,
You know these won't hold me.
So his response was,
Oh, I'm counting on it.
So apparently Fury is aware that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s handcuffs are possible to break out of, which is probably something he should have fixed a while ago considering he knew that. And S.H.I.E.L.D. probably should have better handcuffs if Natasha can just break out of them, which she does. Everyone in the back of the truck with her is an idiot, cartoonishly so. There are so many. None of them notice her holding the handcuffs that were supposed to be restraining her, and they only go after her one at a time, so she beats them all up. The fight just doesn't make any noise until a while after it started, and even when it does start making noise, the people driving hear what's going on way later than they should, so Natasha is able to escape. Not that her escape was possible anyway, since the truck was still moving and the doors didn't open, yet when they open the doors, she's not there. So many stupid things stacked on top of each other to allow her to escape, plus an actual impossibility. How great. We move on to the base with Thor's hammer, where Fury and Clint are talking about it while a shadowy figure takes out guards around the compound. Coulson finds a guard knocked out, so he sounds the alarms. Then he sees that the intruder is Thor, and as he is admiring his hair, Thor stops attacking the guards to just stand and pose. Clint aims at Thor as he walks up to the hammer, but Fury tells him to hold his fire. Despite that, Clint shoots him with an arrow as lightning flashes in the background, which is a cool shot, but it doesn't make any sense considering he's in the base, which afterwards clearly hasn't been struck by lightning. As Fury gets mad at Clint and a bunch of guards run out and aim at him, he says,
I swear I didn't shoot.
Even though that's just blatantly not true. An actually accurate defense would be, I didn't mean to shoot. But the fact that one of his arrows is in Thor's chest means that he definitely did shoot. Clint is locked up and won't talk to anyone, so Fury goes in to talk to him, but on attempting to talk to him, he realizes that Clint is dead. Now for a second time, let's step back and take a look at what this situation looks like to S.H.I.E.L.D. So after all the suspicious stuff with Tony Stark that I talked about earlier, a new guy shows up that is incredibly skilled as he took out a bunch of guards at the S.H.I.E.L.D. base, and the guy Fury orders to watch him from up above ends up shooting and killing him. And when that guy is locked up, he dies when Fury goes into his cell. So even more evidence that could be used against Fury because all signs point to him. Yet S.H.I.E.L.D. still isn't trying to arrest or fire him in any capacity. And not even Coulson is suspicious when he saw that Clint was alive, just to die right when Fury went in. We see Fury and Coulson talking about how Clint died, concluding that he was murdered, probably by the same person who killed Stark. Coulson asks if Fury has any ideas connecting the 3 murders, and Fury responds,
There was an idea.
referring to the Avengers Initiative, Fury's own project. So 3 people who could have been part of the Avengers Initiative are killed while Fury is overseeing the situation or is right next to them. And he is one of the only people with knowledge on this initiative. The evidence against him just keeps piling up, and they do nothing about it. We then move on to Wednesday, and Natasha finds Betty Ross because she needs someone to analyze the syringe. And after taking a close look, Betty finds out that the chemicals inside the syringe actually didn't get out of it. Instead, some sort of projectile was fired from it. Fury calls Natasha saying he has bad news, then asks,
You in a secure location?
So Natasha answers,
Not currently.
but Fury continues on anyway, so I don't know why he asked that. He tells her that Clint is dead, and when talking about who did it, Fury tells her that the murders are connected by the Avengers Initiative, and the remaining candidates are her and Bruce Banner. And she just so happens to go to the right place, so that she is standing right outside of the closet Bruce is hiding in while she's taking the call. Speaking of the place she went to, how did she get from Miami to Virginia in one day after escaping the S.H.I.E.L.D. truck? And was there not somewhere else she could go that's closer to Florida? She said to Betty earlier that she chose Betty because she has experience keeping things off of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s radar. But it's not that hard to do if all you're doing is just analyzing a syringe in a lab, then leaving. And all that travel time, however Nat did it, is a risk, because it's known that she escaped the S.H.I.E.L.D. truck after being arrested for suspected murder. When staying in the closet would have caused Natasha and Betty to fight, Bruce comes out to prevent that. Natasha hears something and says they need to go. We cut back to Coulson, and as he arrives at the S.H.I.E.L.D. base, all of his things start floating all of a sudden. We see that it's because of the Bifrost, which is not a thing that happens, but alright. Reminds me of Gravity Falls. Loki and an army from Asgard arrive out of the Bifrost, so S.H.I.E.L.D. agents go out to meet this army. Fury gets a phone call while talking to Loki, and he says,
Are you gonna take that?
It's kind of strange that Loki knows what a phone is, and what common terminology around it is. But he was DB Cooper, so I guess that is possible. The Loki show is a whole different can of problem worms for another time. The one calling him was Natasha. Her and Bruce are running through the university when Ross and a bunch of soldiers arrive. Bruce says,
It's safer for everyone if I fend for myself. I sort of can't die.
when him dying should not be what he's concerned about, especially during the events of the Incredible Hulk. The entire thing he's afraid of is hurting other people, which is exactly what fending for himself will cause. What does he even mean it's safer for everyone if he fends for himself? If Natasha can somehow get them out of there without a fight, that chance is the safest option they have. Sure, Bruce isn't in danger either way, but it's not safer for everyone if he fights the army by himself. He's gonna kill people and cause a ton of damage, and I'm pretty sure the army is part of everyone. Natasha yells through the closed glass, although I doubt that would result in anyone hearing her. And she starts by saying,
Natasha Romanoff, agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
but it's probably not good to share your name and that you're an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. when you're currently a major suspect for murder and escaped captivity. Although nobody there is aware of that, so they don't try to arrest her. We cut between Bruce turning into the Hulk and Loki preparing the casket of ancient winters. During this, we see Natasha jump straight through glass and land on the ground completely fine. When Loki uses the casket, Fury just lays down on the ground and that saves him from being frozen, I guess. Loki didn't aim it a little more down for some reason. And as the army is fighting the Hulk, he starts expanding, then explodes. That will be explained later. Not well, but I'm not going to talk about it just yet. Fury, after dodging all this freezing, gets up and says,
Declaring war on this planet will not bring your prince back!
so Sif responds with,
Wait! He's not wrong.
I mean, yeah, that's incredibly obvious, but alright. Fury explains to him that they should work together because they are looking for the same person. Loki gives him until sunrise to find out who killed Thor, which is a really stupid decision. You have no information on the situation, Yet you give him less than a day to find someone who, for all you know, he has no information on whatsoever. And Fury doesn't explain to him that that's an incredibly short amount of time either, even when he asserts that when the time limit is reached, he will ravage the entire planet. So Fury is dooming the entire planet if he fails to find the killer in time, and he has no information on them. Why wouldn't he ask for more time? We then cut to a library in Virginia, where Natasha is accessing top-secret S.H.I.E.L.D. files on a public computer. That's just a fantastic choice. She can't use her own account because she's wanted for murder, which makes sense, so she has to ask Coulson for his login. When she logs in, we see it's through a regular web browser. Even more fantastic security decisions from her and on S.H.I.E.L.D's end as well for allowing access like this. While Natasha is looking through the files, she hears something and turns around, but nobody is there. When she goes back to looking, she asks herself,
How did a woman who died 2 years ago access the database yesterday?
So, people currently suspect for murder can't access the database. But a woman who died 2 years ago can. What? They managed to make S.H.I.E.L.D. even more incompetent. If you update permissions in your database system in real time according to who is wanted for murder, surely you would disable the account of a dead person in case somebody wants to try to use that account, right? Apparently not. And this prompts Natasha to call Fury, but then there are noises behind her, and she says,
You won't win. Not against me, not against S.H.I.E.L.D.
to the person who killed Tony Stark, Clint Barton, Thor, and the Hulk. So I don't know, to me it kinda seems like they will win against you. She starts getting beat up like Patrick Star that one time, and instead of running or trying to fight back, she crawls for the phone, and tries to grab it while telling Fury,
It's hope! It's all about hope!
which is very vague and useless, although I'm not going to clarify what she should have said yet, because that's a spoiler. We go back to New Mexico, where Fury is listening to the voicemail Natasha sent over and over again. Coulson comes to tell him that there are 4 hours until sunup, which is not possible because even the earliest sunrises of the year are around 4:30 a.m., and it hasn't passed midnight yet, as it is still Wednesday. He also says that there is one more name on the Avengers Initiative, Fury's. As Fury goes for the pager to contact Captain Marvel, he realizes what Natasha was talking about, drives off to where the destroyer is, and asks it for its boss. We then move on to Thursday, still before sunup, in San Francisco. I'll be generous and say Loki used the Bifrost to get him there, because if Fury went there on foot it would be a lot of running, and he would need a lot of water, because he'd be very thirsty. Fury stands over the grave of Hope Van Dyne, then says,
If it isn't Hank Pym.
Hank Pym. The person assassinating all of the Avengers was Hank Pym. I don't know how Pym got from Virginia to here in less than 4 hours, or even knew to come here, and I also have no idea why Fury expected these things to happen, but it just worked out, I guess. But I'm sure there's a good explanation for why it was Hank Pym that killed the Avengers, right? Let's hear him out.
She died because S.H.I.E.L.D. killed her. She died because of you.
Fury says that Agent Hope Van Dyne died on a mission, to which Pym responds,
Agent? She was my daughter!
That's not mutually exclusive. You shouldn't be surprised by him calling her an agent when that's her official title. Pym claims,
She missed her mother, and you've exploited that!
so Fury responds,
Her mother was an agent?
which is a weird line, but we'll come back to it later. Pym continues on his rant about why he did all of this,
You filled her head with nonsense about protecting humanity and saving the world.
and this line is in character for Hank Pym because he doesn't trust S.H.I.E.L.D. However, it doesn't justify him killing all the potential Avengers.
You took everything from me.
I don't even know who you are.
We then see a montage of how all the Avengers were killed. To kill Tony Stark, Hank was swimming in the syringe's liquid, but Betty said,
Your antidote didn't even make it out of the syringe.
how is that even possible if Hank was in it and broke the tip open? Shouldn't it have all spilled out? If not, Natasha activated it like she did in Iron Man 2, so there was nothing to stop it from exiting the syringe. He hit Clint's hand to shoot the arrow at Thor, then killed Clint while he was locked up. And then there's Bruce. He went inside his bloodstream before he turned into the Hulk, then threw a growing disc at his heart, causing him to explode.
The Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day.
That's not how it works. The growing disc doesn't just grow one part of something, it grows all of it. Otherwise, that ant in Ant-Man 1 would have looked really weird. It would grow all of the Hulk, not just his heart. And even if this is what happened, I'm pretty sure his heart expanding wouldn't just make him explode, as his skin is nearly invulnerable. But that happened, I guess. Hank says that what S.H.I.E.L.D. has always done is
Find others to fight your battles.
well, they recruit people, yeah, like every other organization does. So basically, what Hank said during this rant was that S.H.I.E.L.D. killed Hope, and because of that, he wanted to kill everyone that's part of the Avengers Initiative, and Thor because he's a potential recruit, to get back at Fury. It's weird that he didn't go after Coulson with this being the case, considering he wanted to get back at Fury for taking everything from him. But he thought the Avengers Initiative was everything to Fury, I guess. Normally, this is where I would take a look at a good scene from a mainline MCU movie, but I have a bit of a hunch that I don't need to show you a scene to prove that Hank Pym isn't a murderous psychopath. Instead, I'm going to present a theory on how they got his character so wrong. In case you forgot or haven't seen Ant-Man, there's a line from Hope to explain why Darren Cross slowly goes insane over the course of the movie, until he puts on the Yellow Jacket suit and loses it.
This is not who you are. It's the particles altering your brain chemistry.
And this is exactly what causes Cross to try to enact his revenge, just like Hank tried to do in this episode. But here's the problem. It's not something inherent to having a Yellow Jacket suit that caused Cross to go insane. It was his helmet that was flawed.
The process is highly volatile. One isn't protected. A specialized helmet can affect the brain's chemistry.
Hank has been using the old Ant-Man suit for a very long time, and is still mentally fine. So he obviously could create a Yellow Jacket suit that doesn't have this issue. The writers think that simply using a version of the Yellow Jacket suit would turn Hank insane, but it wouldn't. All of his actions in this episode are his own. Speaking of his actions, let's run through them really quick now that we know it was Hank that did all of this. He murdered 4 people because Fury planned to recruit them in the future, and 1 more because he thinks that person would be recruited by Fury.
Goldilocks? You would have recruited him in a heartbeat.
All of this murder was to get back at Fury because S.H.I.E.L.D. allowed Hope to die on a mission that she went on because she chose to work for S.H.I.E.L.D. So morally, he's all out of whack. This is not at all something Hank would do. And when it comes to his plan, well, it's not so great either. Most of his kills are alright, but when it comes to Natasha, why did he wait so long? He was where she was right when Hulk exploded, and could have killed her there, but he didn't. Then he followed her to the library, which gave him a ton of time to kill her, but he just didn't. When he eventually does go to kill her, he makes a noise which gives away his position. Then just lets her get a phone call out instead of destroying the phone before she can say anything into it. All of this delaying killing her and not destroying the phone is the only thing that leads to Fury knowing what he's up against, allowing him to prepare. Hank is assassinated in terms of both morals and intelligence, the 4th of the show so far. And back on Natasha, why did she say,
Fury, it's hope! It's all about hope!
When she could have just added Van Dyne, or even said, it's Hank Pym? For this stupid decision, along with the fact that she isn't suspicious of Fury when anyone who thinks even remotely like a spy would connect the dots that incriminate him, Natasha is yet another character who is out of character. Back to the scene at hand, Hank starts to attack Fury, but Fury slaps him down. Get it? At hand? When Hank gets back up and starts trying to fight Fury hand to hand, he gets Evo Moment 37. Then Fury flips over him. Fury keeps hitting him, then teleports around a few times, and then a bunch of Nick Furies are all over the place. And when Hank tries to fly away, he gets trapped in ice. It's probably pretty obvious at this point, but it wasn't actually Nick Fury Hank was fighting, but Loki who was using illusions. That's why I said the line,
Her mother was an agent?
Was weird, because yes, it makes sense Loki wouldn't know that. But how would he draw that conclusion from what Hank said? All Hank said was that Fury exploited that Hope missed her mother. That somehow leads to the conclusion that Hope's mom was an agent? He turns off all the illusions, and Hank gets taken away by Asgardian soldiers. Loki says,
I was thinking I might extend my stay here on Midgard.
Which prompts Fury to ask,
For how long?
Then we move on to Friday. I wonder what Fury had for breakfast. Maybe a fried egg? That's not relevant to anything, but I couldn't think of any other Friday puns. We see a meeting at the UN that they somehow arranged in one day, when the UN rules of procedure state that sessions must be scheduled at least 60 days in advance. And in that one day, every nation on Earth has submitted to Loki. No way that all happened in just one day. We see Fury and Coulson with the bodies of the Avengers. Then Fury walks off and we cut to him in the plane where Captain America was frozen. The Watcher says,
"I believe that in this universe, as in every other, hope never dies."
Ironic. He brushes snow off the S.H.I.E.L.D, then Captain Marvel shows up and we cut to black. Steve shouldn't be found until a year later, and I doubt Fury would wait that long to call Captain Marvel in. So somehow Steve just randomly got found a year early. Very cool. Well, that certainly was an episode. As you've probably noticed by now, this video is shorter than the previous two, because this episode just doesn't have as many problems. Doesn't mean it's any good though. Let's start with the plot. Well, for one, it's an episode that is presented in terms of days of the week that each event happens on. Yet the days on which the events happen in relation to each other require a large amount of stretching to work, and the days of the week are just flat out wrong. I'm not sure if it was just them not having any idea which days of the week the events actually occurred on, wanting to start on a Monday because it looks nicer, or both. S.H.I.E.L.D, who is currently run by Hydra, fails to investigate Nick Fury in any capacity, despite the mountain of evidence against him. The fact that they investigate Natasha when the only witness there knows that she wasn't the one who did it, and the fact that Hydra should be taking any chance they can get to remove one of the highest people in S.H.I.E.L.D that isn't part of Hydra. Just to recap, Nick Fury brought Natasha for no particular reason when meeting Tony Stark. Gave her the antidote when she had no idea what was in it and didn't have any part in making it, and had her be the one to inject it. Natasha is the perfect person to frame for this, because out of anyone in S.H.I.E.L.D, she is going to be the least trusted option. Despite all of this, nobody is suspicious of Nick Fury framing her, or even conspiring with her to kill Tony Stark, who is currently being a problem for Fury. They pin it entirely on Natasha instead. S.H.I.E.L.D. guards just miss the fact that Fury hands Natasha the syringe, when they are all standing nearby, and it's crazy that they let Fury talk to her in the first place. They have handcuffs that can be broken out of by a regular strength human. Then the way Natasha escapes the truck is laughable. Everyone in the truck is an idiot, then she just teleports out of it to get away. Then travels from Miami to Virginia somehow without being caught. In the meantime, the person Fury appointed to watch Thor as he goes for the hammer kills Thor, then dies when Fury enters his cell. Natasha happens to be with the last member of the Avengers Initiative other than herself, which is contrived, but from S.H.I.E.L.D's point of view, she couldn't have had any reason to be going there specifically, unless she knows that he's part of the Avengers Initiative, which Fury would have to have told her. The Hulk then dies, which is basically an impossibility as far as they know, and an actual impossibility in this way because the writers don't understand how the grow discs work, but not because of the army that showed up, instead because he randomly explodes. Perhaps because of something Natasha did when she was with Bruce. Then Natasha dies later that night. Fury then claims to have lured Hank Pym, who he now claims is the real killer of all the Avengers, to be captured by Loki, then lets the Asgardians take him away. So now, Hank isn't on Earth to say if Fury was being truthful or not. Hank is also another possible superhero he could have been looking at for the Avengers Initiative, but just didn't write down yet. Similar to Thor, linking him to everyone else Fury killed. It's kind of like how in She-Hulk, Wong appeared, admitted to a crime to exonerate Abomination, then ran away to avoid the consequences, and for some reason they accepted that without any actual proof that it's true. This whole time, and after all of this when Fury is searching for Captain America, another possible Avenger, Fury isn't even investigated in any capacity, when nearly every possible superhero has been eliminated. All signs point back to Fury, and it would be in Hydra's best interest to do so. What a joke. And if they actually thought about this explanation, I feel like with all of this context, they might question how Hank was able to access Hope's account. The most logical choice for Hope would be to keep her login information away from her dad that hates S.H.I.E.L.D. But you know who is more likely to be able to access Hope's account in an attempt to frame Hank? Nick Fury. So, the timeline is a bit wonky, and S.H.I.E.L.D/Hydra is absolutely brain dead throughout the course of the episode. That just about covers the major plot issues from the episode. Although there's also Hank's impossible travel time from Virginia to San Francisco, when he'd have no real reason to know Fury was gonna be at Hope's grave anyway. And then there's Friday. The amount of things that happen in a single day is just insane. So the plot is falling apart as usual. And to briefly talk about the world building, multiple things that are established about S.H.I.E.L.D. are just bizarre. The handcuffs thing that I already mentioned is dumb, but then there's the database access. Natasha can't access her account because she's currently wanted for murder, yet S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who have been dead for 2 years can still access their account. And something else I didn't bring up because I didn't have a place to fit it in, Natasha is helping Fury with the Avengers Initiative, and knows it exists. Yet she doesn't know who the candidates are, even though she is one. And Coulson doesn't even know it exists. So why would Hope have access to it? Hank is able to use her account to find out exactly who is on the Avengers Initiative. Yet Natasha and Coulson can't access that info from their accounts? And why can you access the database from a regular browser on a random computer? It probably should be a bit more secure. That's basically all the world building we got, because most of the episode was retreads of previous stuff with some differences. Now for the characters. The characters in this one weren't so bad for the most part. Nick Fury is the main character we follow, and he mostly acts like Fury and has Fury-like lines. The major bad choice he makes is gambling the Earth over finding someone he has no information on whatsoever, because he for some reason isn't willing to explain the situation to Loki, to say why he needs a bit more time than one night. Loki himself is fine, although setting that strict time bound is strange considering he has no grasp on the situation, and doesn't know if that'll be even close to enough time. Coulson is here. He's mostly the comic relief, not much to talk about. Tony's lines are ripped straight from Iron Man 2. Thor doesn't have any lines. Clint doesn't do much, but does have that dumb line where he says he didn't shoot when he very clearly did. Bruce's priorities are messed up as he says he can't die when he should be more concerned about the other people dying. Then there's Natasha. Natasha spends the whole episode not thinking like a spy, as the evidence that at the very least hints towards Fury framing her doesn't make her suspicious at all. Then she has the voicemail where she is unnecessarily cryptic instead of just saying a last name. She was the one character who was out of character here, a good step down from the 5 each in the previous episodes. But then there's Hank Pym, the man who killed the potential Avengers out of revenge because his daughter's death was caused by her willingly being an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. I know that he hates S.H.I.E.L.D., but this is way too far. Hank Pym is not a murderous psychopath, and the only reason his plan failed is because he was an idiot when dealing with Natasha. At least we get some funny sounding lines from him though.
She died because of you. Goldilocks? That's what you do.
If you're S.H.I.E.L.D., you find others to fight your battles.
That's what you do.
If you're looking for good content, you subscribe to Puggytar.
That's what you do.
The rest of the characters don't do much and aren't worth talking about. I'm going to give episode 3 a 3 out of 10. Hooray, it's better than the last 2. The problems are definitely fewer and less significant, but it still has way too many, and the entire episode only happens because of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s incompetence and Hank Pym being way out of character. Now this is a bit of spoiler for later videos, but this is where the show peaks. The best episode, a piece of garbage which has the redeeming quality of some of the characters were in character for the most part. Now I'm sure some of you are saying, but Puggytar, episode 4 is the best episode. Strange Supreme's character work is so good. And to that I say, wait and you'll see. A big thanks to Noob Sunrider for helping me work out all the timeline stuff. And as always, thanks for watching.
That's what you do.